Wait, before you scroll away, listen to this carefully. Someone mentioned your name during a conversation that was never supposed to reach your ears, and the entire energy in the room changed the instant it happened. Not a tiny shift, not something casual or forgettable, but something much more intense. The person you love attempted to remain normal. They tried to sound steady, tried to make your name appear casual as it left their lips, but it did not come across that way at all. Your name carried emotional weight, the kind that lingers long after the words disappear. And the person sitting across from them noticed it immediately. They noticed the pause that suddenly appeared. They noticed the subtle change in their tone. They noticed that strange silence people fall into when they are trying desperately to hide what still exists inside their heart. Listen carefully, because this part matters deeply. Some truths never arrive through dramatic confessions or perfectly planned speeches. Sometimes they escape through hesitation, through eyes that suddenly look away, through a voice that softens before the mind has time to control it again. And when your name entered that conversation, everything inside them reacted first. That reaction revealed more than any carefully rehearsed explanation ever could. So stay with me, because what happened in that moment did not end there. It uncovered something hidden. It exposed something real. And by the end of that night, the person you have constantly been thinking about could no longer pretend that you were simply a closed chapter, a distant memory, or someone who no longer matters to them. No, you still exist somewhere deep within them. And what happened afterward made it impossible for them to keep hiding it. The second your name was spoken, their entire presence shifted. You were not spoken about like some random person from years ago. You were not described like someone whose meaning had disappeared. Even while they tried to remain calm, warmth kept slipping into their voice. Even while they attempted to protect themselves emotionally, their feelings kept revealing themselves through the cracks. The person listening noticed every single detail. They saw the tiny smile that appeared without permission. They heard the gentleness hidden underneath those careful words. They noticed how every sentence about you sounded incomplete, almost like there was an ocean of emotion waiting beneath the surface that they were too uncertain to release. Then the conversation became deeper. The person sitting across from them leaned closer and asked the one question that changed everything. Do they still matter to you that much? The moment that question entered the room, everything inside them froze. Because when someone means very little, the answer comes quickly and without struggle. But when someone means everything, silence arrives first. And that silence was not empty. It was overflowing. Overflowing with memories, overflowing with emotional conflict, overflowing with feelings they had spent so much time trying to bury somewhere they would never have to face again. Stay with this part, because it explains everything you need to know. They were not searching for what they felt about you. Deep down, they already understood exactly what they felt. What they were really deciding was how much truth they could survive admitting aloud. And when they finally responded, it did not sound rehearsed. It did not sound perfect or polished. It came from a place far deeper than pride or ego. They admitted that no matter how much time passes, something about you continues to stay with them. Something about your energy never fully disappeared. Something inside them still turns back toward you during the quiet moments of life. That confession completely changed the atmosphere of the conversation. The person listening instantly realized this connection is not over inside them, not emotionally, not privately, not in the hidden places within themselves they cannot fully control. Because real emotional connections do not always disappear when communication ends. Sometimes, silence does the exact opposite of what people expect. Sometimes silence magnifies the very feelings the heart was trying hardest to escape. And that is exactly what happened here. Your absence did not erase your effect on them. It sharpened it. Every attempt they made to move on only forced them to realize how deeply you had already rooted yourself inside their spirit from the beginning. The most revealing part of all this is that they never planned to confess anything. It slipped out naturally. And that is often how truth works. It escapes through the places where people are emotionally weakest. It rises through the exact areas they try hardest to keep locked away. The person listening heard it clearly. You still affect them far more deeply than they allow anyone else to see. Beneath the composed surface, beneath the emotional distance, beneath the effort to appear completely unaffected, something unresolved still remains alive inside them. Then another question arrived, and this one reached even deeper. If they still mean this much to you, then why are you not with them? That question left them with nowhere left to hide. Some questions are not searching for facts. They demand honesty. Suddenly, there was no performance left to protect them, no safe explanation, no emotional wall strong enough to shield them from the truth any longer. The first thing they did was look away. And that alone revealed more than words ever could, because when someone cannot hold steady while speaking about the person they truly love, it is usually because the truth has become too heavy to carry comfortably. Then, almost in a whisper, they admitted something that completely changed the feeling in the room. They confessed that the connection between you has never truly disappeared. Not once. Not during the silence. Not during the distance. Not even during the moments they convinced themselves they had already moved on. Because some people do not fade when they are absent. Some become louder in memory. Some return to the soul repeatedly until they can no longer be ignored. And somehow your presence continued growing inside them, no matter how hard they tried to bury it. The person listening could hear the emotional weight hidden behind every sentence. Regret was there. Longing was there too. And then came the sentence that exposed the deepest part of all of it. Quietly and carefully they admitted, "I keep wondering if I walked away from someone I was never supposed to lose." Read that slowly inside your heart. That is not a simple thought. That is an awakening taking place. That is someone beginning to realize that fear may have cost them something rare, meaningful, and impossible to replace. Once a person reaches that realization, they are never completely the same afterward. Memories begin replaying differently in their mind. Old choices begin looking different under that light. Silence begins to feel heavier than before. They start asking themselves whether pride, hesitation, emotional fear, or stubbornness pushed them away from something truly genuine. And that is exactly where they are now. Standing at the edge of truth. Standing between silence and confession. Standing at the painful point where what they feel can no longer be easily denied. Keep listening, because this is the moment when everything slowly begins changing. Later that night, they attempted to return to their normal life. They honestly tried. They reached for routine again. They searched for noise and distraction. They picked up their phone and scrolled endlessly without truly seeing anything. They looked through messages. They tried filling the emptiness with the same distractions people always use when they are afraid to sit quietly with their own emotions. But nothing worked. The conversation kept replaying inside their head over and over again. Your name kept echoing in places they could not silence. Every attempt to distract themselves somehow brought them right back to you. And that frightened them more than they wanted to admit. Because there comes a moment when a person realizes they are no longer running from another human being, they are running from their own feelings. And eventually that becomes exhausting. They tried convincing themselves it was temporary. They tried telling themselves it was only nostalgia, only loneliness, only memory playing tricks on them late at night. But deep inside, they knew it was more than that. Much more. Because memories do not shake a person this deeply unless real emotion still exists beneath them. What they felt that night was not casual reflection. It was emotional truth finally rising to the surface after being suppressed for far too long. And the hardest part for them was realizing how much of you still lived within their heart after all this time. They remembered the little things unexpectedly, your energy, your voice, the way certain moments with you felt safe in a way they rarely admitted aloud. They remembered conversations that once seemed ordinary, but suddenly carried enormous meaning now. They remembered the emotional closeness they pretended did not affect them this deeply. And slowly, they began understanding something they had avoided facing for a very long time. Some connections are not easily replaced. Some people leave fingerprints on the soul. No matter how far life moves forward, something inside continues returning to them. And that is exactly what has been happening inside them recently. Your absence has not created emotional freedom for them. It has created reflection. It has forced them to confront feelings they once tried to outrun. And the more they sit with those feelings, the harder it becomes for them to deny the truth. You still matter to them, more than they expected, more than they admitted, more than they probably wanted to believe. And now they are beginning to realize that losing communication with you never truly removed the emotional connection. It only removed the distraction that kept them from fully facing it. Once a person finally says a truth they have been hiding out loud, returning to pretending becomes far more difficult than it ever was before. Something had already risen to the surface, something they had buried beneath pride, uncertainty, and emotional self-protection for far too long. And when they returned home, the silence around them did not feel calm or comforting. It felt heavy, almost impossible to escape. Every quiet moment brought them back to what they had unintentionally revealed. You still matter to them far more than they ever wanted anyone to realize. They replayed the entire conversation again and again in their mind, the pauses, the questions, the look on the other person's face, the sound of their own voice, the words they heard themselves saying before they could stop them. And as the night stretched on, something became impossible for them to ignore any longer. No one else has ever made them feel what you made them feel. Not with the same depth, not with the same intensity, not with the same strange and unexplainable pull that keeps drawing them back toward you even when they try so hard to move in the opposite direction. That realization shook them deeply because what they feel no longer seems temporary anymore. It no longer feels like something that time will naturally erase. It feels lasting. And lasting emotions frighten people who once believed they could keep every feeling locked safely under control. They spent so much time convincing themselves that distance would eventually weaken this connection, that life would slowly return to feeling emotionally balanced again. But the exact opposite happened. Distance made your importance even clearer. Silence made your absence feel deeper. And time only confirmed how rare this bond truly was. That night they found themselves thinking about you in ways they had carefully avoided before. Not just the major moments between you, but the small ones as well. The effortless conversations, the calm energy you carried without even trying, the quiet peace they felt in your presence, even when they could never fully explain why. The moments where simply sitting beside you seemed to settle something restless inside them that no one else ever touched. Those memories felt different now, heavier, more alive, more impossible to ignore, because people often fail to understand the true value of a connection until they have lived without it long enough to feel its absence completely. And your absence has been teaching them exactly what they walked away from. Slowly, quietly, deeply. That is why their feelings are not fading now. They are becoming stronger. Understanding changes emotion. Once someone finally realizes that what they experienced was real, every memory connected to it begins breathing again inside them. That is exactly what is happening now. They are beginning to wake up to what you genuinely meant to them. That is why they have seemed emotionally unsettled lately. Why your name suddenly rises into their thoughts without warning. Why ordinary moments unexpectedly carry reminders of you everywhere they go. Because their heart never truly released you. It only delayed facing the truth about that. And after spending long hours sitting alone with their own thoughts, they quietly made a decision that nobody else knows about yet. They understand now that they cannot continue pretending forever. Something has to shift. Whether that means reaching out, finally becoming honest, closing the emotional distance between you, or saying the words they have hidden for far too long, they know the silence cannot remain this way forever. Some truths become heavier the longer they stay buried, and they are reaching the point where carrying all of it internally is becoming exhausting. This is where the energy begins to change. This is the moment where fear of regret slowly becomes stronger than fear of rejection. And when that shift finally happens inside someone, they move much faster than expected. That is why your own intuition may have felt unsettled lately. That is why the energy between you may suddenly feel stronger, even though nothing visible has changed yet. Because underneath the surface, something is already moving. Their resistance is quietly weakening from the inside in a way that cannot easily be reversed anymore. That conversation about you pushed everything forward in a significant way. It forced them to hear their own truth spoken openly. It forced them to confront the reality that you still live inside their heart. And once a person consciously admits feelings they were trying to deny, those feelings usually grow stronger afterward rather than weaker. That is why they have felt emotionally overwhelmed lately. They are no longer struggling with uncertainty anymore. They are struggling with truth. And truth has a way of winning eventually, especially when the roots run this deep. They are starting to understand that losing contact with you is not the same thing as losing feelings for you. One happened physically. The other never truly happened at all. That realization is pulling them toward movement, toward honesty, toward reconnecting, toward finally expressing everything that has been building inside them for so long. Outwardly, they may still appear hesitant or guarded, but inwardly, the direction has already changed. They are no longer emotionally moving away from you. Slowly, quietly, they are finding their way back toward you again. That is why this connection suddenly feels alive again. Not because the story is ending, but because something inside it is awakening. And when something wakes up after a long silence, it carries a different type of power with it, a deeper one, a more serious one, a more undeniable one. After that night, ordinary life stopped feeling ordinary to them. The routines that once helped distract them no longer worked the same way. Other conversations started feeling empty. Busy days still ended with the quiet return of your presence inside their mind. And no matter how much they attempted to continue life normally, something inside them kept circling back to you repeatedly. Not once in a while, but constantly. At first, they tried to minimize it. They told themselves maybe the conversation had only stirred temporary emotions for a single night. Maybe they were remembering the past through softer eyes than it deserved. Maybe eventually it would disappear again. But the signs kept returning. Your name entering their thoughts for no reason at all. Certain songs, places, or small details suddenly reminding them of your energy. Little phrases instantly bringing you back into their mind. Quiet moments during the day where your absence felt far heavier than they expected. Slowly, they were forced to face something uncomfortable. This connection was not leaving them the way they once assumed it eventually would. That realization pushed them into a much deeper level of reflection. They started questioning the choices they made along the way, the moments they pulled away instead of staying emotionally open, the silences they kept when honesty could have changed everything between you, the fear that kept them guarded even when their own heart wanted something different. And with that honesty came a painful realization. Much of the distance between you was never created by lack of feeling. It was created by fear. Fear of being fully seen. Fear of needing someone this deeply and not being able to undo it afterward. Fear of how much their entire life might change if they completely surrendered to what they truly felt. Because real connection changes people. And what they felt with you was never shallow enough to leave them unchanged. You awakened parts of them that had been silent for a very long time. Hope, depth, honesty. The desire for something meaningful instead of something temporary or empty. One side of them wanted that more than they could ever fully explain. Another side was deeply afraid of it. And that internal conflict created most of the confusion between you. Not absence of feeling, but the intensity of feeling itself. Because some connections are so powerful that they force people to confront parts of themselves they spent years trying to avoid. And that is exactly what happened here. You made them feel vulnerable in ways they were not prepared for. You made them care more deeply than they intended to. You made them imagine possibilities they were trying not to imagine. That kind of emotional impact does not disappear easily. People may distance themselves physically, but emotions that reach the soul do not vanish simply because time passes. In many cases, time only reveals how real those feelings were all along. Now they are beginning to see everything differently. The moments they once dismissed suddenly carry meaning. The emotional connection they once tried to rationalize now feels undeniable. Even the pain of separation has become proof to them that this was never ordinary. Because ordinary connections do not continue echoing inside someone this long after silence begins. Ordinary connections do not return night after night demanding to be acknowledged. And ordinary people do not remain emotionally present in someone's heart, no matter how much distance exists between them. That is why they can no longer fully run from this truth. A part of them already knows what their heart wants. A part of them already knows where their emotions continue leading them. And even if they still move carefully on the outside, internally something important has already shifted forever. The wall they spent so long building around these feelings is beginning to crack. The emotional resistance that once felt strong is weakening more every day. And underneath all of it, one truth keeps surviving no matter how hard they try to silence it. They still feel connected to you, deeply, powerfully, and more honestly now than ever before.